There's basically a trade-off between generalization and specialization, between breadth and depth, between bi- building tall and building wide. Basically, you can choose to be. You can not really choose. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. Right? We're the ultimate adaptation. We're the ultimate adaptive creature. But of course, that adaptation comes with side effects. Today, we think of specialization as good, right? We have a very we have a society focused on efficiency, optimization, specialization, individualization. It's all the same thing, right? But efficiency is also fragility, right? The more you rely on only one thing, the more you rely on processes, the more fragile you become, right? You put all your eggs in one basket, basically. All of modern society basically is built on the idea of specialization and individualization, specialization. All of modern society is built on that idea. It's one day supply chains, right? Or just in time supply chains, personalized algorithms, all sorts, all these different jobs that we make. These are all specializations, right? Niches. But of course, we know that niche things are also very fragile too. Niches work if the environment itself is stable, right? But if it's not, then it goes away quickly. We usually think of being a generalist, right? Being good at a lot of things, but not being great at anything. We think of that as like potential, right? We being second place, right? It's a very very old argument, right? Being beta, I believe. Was There was a famous Greek philosopher. He was called Beta because he was good at everything, but he wasn't great at anything. So a jack of all trades, basically, a generalist. Well, the generalist though is the most resilient because he can do a lot of things, right? It's the most resilient. It's not the most efficient, but it is the most resilient. And right now, basically, the tension in all of human civilization, basically, the tension is between specialization and generalization, right? Generalist and specialist, basically. Between having societal complexity, right? Having artists, having pianists, having musicians, having doctors, engineers, lawyers, right? Having all this specialization versus, and so each person is able to express more of their own individual creativity versus being a generalist, right? Being able to do a lot of things, a jack of all trades, right? That's always been the tension in modern society. The more specialist you become, the more stable of an environment you need, right? Because you need that niche to be fulfilled. But in order to create a stable environment, you need to constantly maintain it, upkeep it, right? Because the only constant is change. And so to stay the same, just to stay the same, you have to keep running, right? The Red Queen, right? You have to keep running just to stay in the same place, basically. The only constant is change. And if you want a stable environment, that means you constantly have to maintain that environment, right? That's why the increased complexity comes with exponentially increased maintenance. Right? That's why all human systems we make, right? All civilization hinges on specialization, but all civilization hinges on stability, right? So we almost have to create monoculture, basically, right? We have to create efficiency, optimizations, efficiency, monoculture, right? Because that's the most efficient, right? Monopoly, right? We have to create these things to make systems more efficient to maintain that stability, right? For specialization. But of course, that comes at the cost of fragility, right? The more specialized, the more complex a system, the more complicated a system, the more fragile, right? Because you have more parts that can break, right? If you have one gear, that's the only thing that can break. If you have 10 gears, right? If you have a machine with 10 gears, if any one of those 10 breaks, the whole machine's broken, right? So that's why the more complicated a system, the more fragile the system. Because you have more you have more parts where it can break. That's basically the whole entire premise. That's the entire tension in society between stability and specialization and resilience and generalists. That's kind of the whole tension. Now, if you're too much of a generalist, right? If you're too much of a generalist, you're not able to take advantage of certain environments, right? Certain resources, certain environments, right? But if you're too much of a specialist, you become dependent on specific factors, right? You become very dependent on it. So I'll give an example, right? An easy example: oil, right? A generalist would not, if you're a hardcore generalist, you would not use oil, right? Because you would not want to be dependent on it, right? But if you specialize in using oil, right, and you extract oil and create all these petroleum refineries, right, you become oil is very useful for a lot of things, right? Fuel, fertilizer, energy, pharmaceuticals, household products, plastics, right? You can make anything from oil, basically, right? Basically. But you become very dependent, right? And you get caught up you're basically in a codependent relationship with oil. So the strength of a specialist is you can take things to your advantage, right? You can take resources or situations to your advantage. The weakness of a specialist is exactly the same, right? You become dependent. I think then really it seems like basically humans are the ultimate special generalist, basically. Humans are the ultimate special generalist, right? We are generalist in the sense of like, as a species as a whole, right? But each person is specialist, right? So we start, we start taking advantage of horsepower, right? We start domesticating horses and cows and stuff, right? And we domesticate crops, right? So we start agriculture, right? But then we're like, oh, we need more power, right? So then we start specializing into coal, right? Coal and electricity and fossil fuels, right? And then it's like, oh wait, no, right? And we're running, we might run, those aren't renewable. So we need to take advantage of a different resource, right? And on and on and on, right? So it's like a never-ending cycle. A never-ending cycle, like, of maintenance, basically. A never-ending cycle. The Red Queen theory. It is interesting then that there's almost like a natural balancing mechanism to this. If things get too specialized, nature kind of almost naturally forces us to reconsider, right? There's almost a homeostatic feedback mechanism. Basically, the Earth is like one big feedback mechanism, right? If we abuse something too much, right? The Earth is like, hey, you should not do that, right? And it's It's an automatic, course correction, basically, right? And if that doesn't work, the civilization collapses, right? It's almost like poetic justice in a way, almost, right? A civilization that works with nature survives, ultimately, right? A civilization that doesn't work with nature collapses, ultimately, right? In the end, right? So it's always like a course correction, right? You take advantage of one resource, right? It depletes, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, we should not do that anymore, right? And then you take advantage of another resource, oh, we should not do that anymore, right? And on and it's like a pendulum, right? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, a pendulum, basically. That's what it seems like.